Hello my dear students! Welcome back to our YouTube channel. For today's video, we will be talking about Chapter 3, Methods of Research or Methodology. Now, let's go to our intro. If you're new in this channel, I share educational content for senior high school students, particularly video guides for the self-learning modules. Bigyan niyo po ng suporta ang channel na to sa pamamagitan ng pagla-like, pagko-comment, pag-share at pag-subscribe sa aking mga videos. Daghang salamat! Previously, we are able to discuss about writing our Chapter 1 introduction and writing our Chapter 2 review of related literature. For this video, we will be talking about the parts of our Chapter 3 and how to write these specific parts. Now, let us switch to our slides. Hello my dear students, so today we will be talking about writing Chapter 3, your methods of research and procedures or methodology. Chapter 3, or the methods or methodology, is a chapter of the research process. It contains a comprehensive description of the research design, samples and sampling techniques, research instruments, validation of these research instruments, data gathering procedures, and statistical tools and treatments. So basically, in your methodology, you will give a detailed description. You will describe everything that you will do for your research or what you did in your research. So many would ask, what is the tense that would be used when you are writing your methodology? If you are still going to give your proposal to your research teacher, it will be in the form of future tense. Since proposal pa lang siya, dapat future tense pa kasi hindi nyo pa nagagawa. Once you are already done with your research and you need to revise your chapter 3, that is the time that you will make it as past tense. So, for the first part of your chapter 3, we have your research design. So, what should be written in research design? In your research design, it should have the brief description and justification of the research design used, and it should be explained. So what is this research design ba? So research design in research is categorized according to the procedure the researcher collects and analyzes data and his research purpose. So hindi siya yung parehas sa meme na nakikita nyo na if i-assign sa inyo yung research design, you will put borders and flowers on your papers as design. It is not the research design. It is the procedure in which the researcher collects and analyzes data and his research purpose. So we have two kinds of research design. It is the qualitative and quantitative research. So how will you know if your study is quantitative ba or qualitative research? So for the purposes of qualitative and quantitative research, we have these similarities and differences. So both for qualitative and quantitative research, it shares concerns in problem finding, in explaining the relationships of data to claim, in theory, building and explaining particular cases in the light of established knowledge and theory. So both of them, qualitative research and quantitative research, is a way in solving your problems and finding relationships between data and phenomena. However, the differences of the purpose between qualitative research and quantitative research, or qualitative, it deals with historical problems of cause and effect or interpretation of unique social phenomena. So for your qualitative research, it wants to know what is the reason behind the cause and effect of a specific phenomena, or you want to interpret why this kind of social phenomena is happening. So for your qualitative, you want to know the factors, you want to know what are the problems causing the cause and effect relationships, and you want to interpret why this kind of social phenomena is happening. However, for your quantitative research, it represents the responses of large numbers of individuals to different kinds of stimuli. So qualitative is more on the interpretation of the social phenomena, and quantitative research is more on the responses of large numbers to a different kind of or to a specific stimuli. The two sets of methods allow researchers to deal with problems of various dimensions in different contexts. So that is the purpose of qualitative and quantitative research design. So again, your research design is, as you can see here, is categorized according to procedure, in which the researcher collects and analyzes data and his research purpose. So we already know the research purpose. Now we want to know what are the procedures and the differences in procedures and data collection between quantitative and qualitative data. So for your procedures, in quantitative data, it is more on experiments, standardized instruments, structured interview, and structured observation. For your qualitative research, the procedures that would be done in order to get your data is through observations, open-ended interviews, review of documents, and participants' observation. For data collection, in quantitative research, it should be statistical. It should be statistical or operationalized variables. For qualitative research, the data collection is through descriptive field notes, documents, and interviews. So again, in your research design, you will either choose whether your research design will be quantitative or qualitative research. Then, from that, you will describe in your paper what is your purpose in doing your study, what are the procedures that will be done, and how you will collect your data. Next, we have participants of the study or the sampling and sampling techniques. On your research paper, the researcher must explain how the participants are selected and the place where the selection will occur, or where should the participants came from. So, for example, the study chose 50 senior high school students from School A using simple random sampling. This is a very summarized example na, but later I will give you a longer example on how to write your participants or something methods. You should also insert the detailed selection process after. You will include why the sampling is chosen and how sampling was done. So from your population, so population is the bigger group. If the population is too large, then a sampling method can be employed. Having a large number of population is too exclusive to measure individually. Therefore, information must be gained through a study of some portions or sample of it. So from the population, you will get samples only for your research. Since having a large population, it will be really difficult to measure it individually. Now, for the research instruments, we are already done with the research design and your sampling techniques. For your research instruments, so to carry out the research study, the researcher must use the most appropriate instruments and procedures that will be used for the collection, tabulation, and analysis of data. So how would you know what is the most appropriate instrument and procedures, and what are even these instruments? So these instruments will include psychological tests, questionnaires, opinionaires, checklists, rating scales, interviews, and document analysis. So basically, these are the items or instruments that you would use in order to gather your data. So question, how many research instruments should be used in a study? Researchers can use one or employ several documents in combination. So, pwedeng may questionnaire ka, may checklist ka pa. So, you can use one or many as long as it is valid and it will help your study to be more accurate in your research. So, this is why it is very important to include this in your Chapter 2 or RRL in order to choose what instrument best fits your study. Since you will get in your Chapter 2 your references, and you will use other studies as your references para hindi na kayo masyadong mahirapan, or meron kayong guide na gagamitin para sa inyong Chapter 3 on what you are going to use as your research design, what are the research instruments you should use, etc., etc. So validation of instruments. Reliability and validity are important considerations to test the effectiveness of any data gathering device. So you will get this reliability and validity for your research instruments through comments, suggestions, and corrections given by the experts in connection with the area of specialization who are not participants of the study. It is also suggested that questionnaires must be submitted first to your advisor or research advisor for comments, suggestions, and corrections. So if you already made your if you had your research instrument, or you based your questionnaires or survey based on a research instrument that was made before, you may ask your research advisor to check it for you so that it will be able to correct it or improve. So next we have data gathering procedures. In writing your chapter 3, give a brief description of what are the data gathering procedures used and your statistical approach in evaluating your data. So for the data gathering procedures, we have the descriptive research. It seeks to provide information about one or more variables. It is used to answer the questions, what exists, and can be used in quantitative methods or qualitative methods. For quantitative descriptive method, it is a procedure involving the assignment of numerical values to variables. So since it is quantitative, you will assign numerical values to your variables. So if you make your research or survey, there are choices there that has specific numerical values assigned to it. So for example, the researcher collects data by using teachers to encircle one of the 5 choices that corresponds the percentage of instructional time he used in various types of student groupings and instructional materials. So for your comparative research, the researcher examines the relationships, similarities, or differences among several variables. For example, the researcher wants to compare the writing performance of members of a single group of students, or he wants to compare the writing performance of 2 groups. So for the statistical description of data, once you are already done with your survey, the researcher tallies the collected data. Following quantitative descriptive procedures, researchers can use descriptive measures such as central tendency and variability. This is the mean, median, or mode. Or you can also use other measures or statistical operations based on what you had researched on your chapter 2. So if you have found studies that use other kinds of statistical methods and statistical tools and treatments, you can use that as long as it would be the best option for your study. So that would be writing chapter 3, methods, research, and procedures. We will now proceed on the format para makita nyo yung flow ng ating chapter 3. So here we have our format for our chapter 3, methodology. So for the first part, you need to write this one. It is like a short introduction what is inside your methodology or chapter 3. This chapter presents the research design, sampling and sampling techniques, research instrument, data gathering procedure, and statistical technique. The detailed discussion on the research process will be conducted to obtain the objectives of this research study. So in this part, pwede siya magkaiba-iba. It could be different based on what your research advisor advised. So in this part, pwede pa siyang mabago depending on your research advisor. If he or she wants to insert more in your methodology, it is okay. This is just a format or example, a basic example what or how methodology looks like. Kung maidadagdag pa kayo dito or meron kayong tatanggalin, it is up to you or up to your research advisor. In having your research, you should always have your research advisor with you since they will be the one helping you throughout your research paper. So now, since we have research design here, we will also have research design here. In this part, you will justify the research design you will use throughout the study and how you will do it. So katulad ng diniscuss natin kanina, you will write the purpose of your study, the procedures, and how the data collection will be done. So, for example, this study utilizes the use of your research design or method use in order to achieve your objective here or your purpose. Then you will justify the use of this design by stating some previous or related studies that you use in it. You can also state how this research design is best choice for your study. Now, after we have our research design, we have our sampling and sampling techniques, which is here. So, for example, the population of the study are grade 12 senior high school students enrolled in. The aim is to interview your sample size. So, if you have a big population, you will only get a sample size, or if you have a big population, you will just get a sample size. It could be 100 or 200. It is up to you. Senior high school students that are engaged in the modular learning. So this is just an example. You can insert other participant demographics depending on your study. So if you have other requirements on choosing your participants, you will also write in your sampling techniques. For example, you will only need participants ranging from 13 years old to 18 years old, or you will only need male participants or female participants. It is up to you. You will also write that in your sampling and sampling techniques or participant demographics. Sampling design that the researchers will utilize is simple random sampling. So after that, you will explain how will you conduct the specific sampling method. And in this part, sampling design, you will obviously write what kind of sampling design you will use. It is not always simple random sampling. It is based on your research again on your RL. So kung iba yung sampling method or sampling design na gagamitin nyo, yun yung ilalagay nyo sa sampling and sampling techniques. Okay, so for your sampling and sampling techniques, you will write your participant demographics, what kind of participants are required in your study, how many sample size you will need, and what are the sampling techniques that you will follow. So next we have your research instrument. And for example, to carry out the research study, the researcher used the following research instrument. So you will write here, after that statement, you will write what are the research instruments that you will use, and where did you find it, where did you get it, did you make your own survey questionnaires, did you validated it, etc. So write how you created or where you found your research instrument. Did you have a reference in creating that survey? State it here. Did you create your own research questions? Where did you base your questions? How did you validate them? You will state here in your research instrument section. State the process on how you validated your research instrument. So, if you had your research advisor improved it, you will write it. Or if you used a psychological test based on the internet or a previous study that was proven to be true, you can use it in your research instrument. Just properly state what are your references in your research instrument. Next, we have your data gathering procedures. State here how you gathered your data. If through survey, you explain how the survey obtains the data. So, for example, using the validated questionnaire, the researcher collects data by using teachers to encircle one of the 5 choices that corresponds the percentage of instructional time used in various types of student groupings and instructional materials. After gathering the data, it is tallied and grouped based on the answers given by the respondent. So once you are done with your data gathering procedures, you will now do the statistical tools and treatments. So the researcher tallies the collected data and indicate what kind of statistical tools and treatments will be used to interpret the data obtained. So based on our discussion, it could have different kinds of statistical instruments used. You can have the central tendencies, you can have the mean median mode, you can have the averages, variance, sample variance, standard deviation, etc. etc. There are a lot of kinds of statistical tools and treatments that can be used in your research study. However, you need to find what is the most appropriate tool or treatment that would be used in your study based on the survey you did and based also on the previous studies that was conducted. So, make sure na if you're doing your chapter 3, you already have plans based on your chapter 2. So, all of these, that is why I don't have a fixed format here, is it all depends on your study, on what kind of statistical tools you will use, what kind of research design you will use. So this is just a basic format, and everything will still be based on how you want your study to be made based on your previous research on your chapter 2, and of course with the help of your research advisor. So if ever you will be using this format, make sure that you will have your research advisor check it so that it will be improved, or he or she would suggest other things that will be uh, added or omitted in your research paper. So that would be all in writing chapter 3. I hope you have learned something, and if you have questions, you may comment down on our comment box below. Thank you for listening, everyone, and enjoy your day. Bye!